Good morning. Be seated.
Good morning, Your Honor. The defense calls Jacqueline DeMint.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I can, yes.
Good morning, Ms. DeMint.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce... Well, that's not a good start.
Okay. Here we go.
All right, we're ready to go. Could you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
I am Jacqueline DeMint,
And where are you from?
Nashville,
Where did you go to high school?
Pearlcombe.
Did you have any education after you graduated from high school?
I went to Kaplan and got my degree in medical assistant.
Did you also attend for a period of time University of Tennessee at Martin?
I did, but I did not graduate from there.
When you were at UT Martin, did you have an area of study?
I did English.
And back in September of 2008, did you work at the Nashville Marriott at Vanderbilt?
I think it was actually October of 2007.
Okay, that's when you started.
Right, I started, yes.
But as of September of 2008, you were still working there?
Yes.
And what was your position?
Front desk agent.
Now, when you first started at the Nashville Marriott, did you go through any type of training?
Yes, there was computer training that was a couple of days that took to complete, as well as side-by-side training, shadowing someone that lasted a couple of weeks.
Now, as part of that computer-based training, did you have to take any type of tests?
There was scoring on it, but that was computerized and printed up after the completion of the training on the computer.
And so you had to complete the computer training before you could move on to the shadowing.
Right.
Could you explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you mean by shadowing at the front desk?
Shadowing is working side by side with someone, not exactly having your own account to work in, but you're working side by side with them while they're working on the phones, greeting guests, doing their regular job duties. So you'll see actually hands-on what they're doing, what you're going to be doing, and learning right alongside them.
You're doing a good job so far. Slow down just a little bit. I talk fast too, so I'm going to try to slow down as well. While you were going through the shadowing, were there instances in which you would actually get to try to do new tasks yourself?
We did complete some tasks, but it was still right along with someone, and it was while they were watching. It was nothing that we completed on our own or by ourselves.
And who were the supervisors that you worked with at the front desk during your time at the Nashville Marriott?
That would be Sheila and Nina, And Dave was the manager.
So Sheila and Nina Rivera-Keene would have been the front desk supervisors,
Yes.
and Mr. McWilliams would have been the manager.
Yes.
As part of that training that you received when you first started at the Nashville Marriott, were topics such as guest privacy covered?
Yes.
What type of things were you trained to keep private about guests?
Their personal information, so far as where they live at, address, telephone number, even personal information that's on the guest account, room numbers, anything concerning their reservation would be kept personal, or they would have to verify. We would have to give verification when calling in order to give out information.
So if somebody came to the front desk and said, "Tell me what room Mr. Smith is in," what would your training have indicated to you was the response to that?
We would have asked for phone number. We would have asked for any address, anything to pull up that reservation to confirm that they knew, or that they knew about the reservation, or that they were aware about the information on file. So if they couldn't.
Sorry, go ahead.
So if they couldn't answer one thing, there were other key points or things that we could ask about the reservation for them to verify before we gave the information out.
So if you were working the front desk and someone came down and said, "I locked myself out of my room," how would you handle one of those situations?
Yes, we would ask what room number it was. We could pull it up on the computer, and then from there we would ask information about the account for them to verify that it's them.
And during your time, let me back up. Did you actually complete the training process at the front desk?
Yes.
And was there a period of time after you finished training in which you were allowed to work on your own?
That was after the shadowing.
So once you got done with the shadowing, you were capable of running a shift?
Right.
And during the entire time that you were working at the Vanderbilt Marriott, did you implement and use the training that was provided to you?
Yes.
Now, there's been some testimony earlier about a front desk agent would actually kind of have two roles. They would actually work the front desk, interact to customers that came up, and they'd also work as the operator in the back. Do you recall that?
Right, that's correct.
And during your time at the Nashville Marriott, you would have done both of those roles.
Right.
And you would actually sometimes do both of those roles on the same shift.
You do. Mm-hmm.
Was the training that you got in working the front desk stuff you also used when you were working as the operator in the back?
Yes.
So back in September of 2008, if a guest called for a reservation, how would you handle such a call?
We would transfer them to reservations. The main local, the headquarter place where they took the reservations, actually put them into the system. From then, it would transport over into our system.
So when you say transfer to reservations, is that to Marriott International?
It is.
Marriott?
Mm-hmm.
Now, during your time at the front desk, were you familiar with using the property management system that was there in September of 2008?
Yes.
And were you provided training in how to use that system?
Yes.
Was that part of the hands-on training that you were receiving?
Yes.
At any time during your employment with the Vanderbilt Marriott, did you ever use Marcia?
I vaguely remember Marcia, not too much about it though, too.
Did you ever receive any training in how to use it?
We went over it, but I don't think it was fully covered. It wasn't something that I really used too much of.
Would that be something that you would have accessed while working at the front desk?
I don't really remember too much about Marcia specifically.
While you were working at the front desk, if you had an issue come up with a guest, a request, or some type of question that you couldn't answer, how would you handle that situation?
I would ask for further assistance with another agent that was beside me that had been there longer and may know the answer, or I would ask Dave.
And that would be the manager for the front desk?
Right. If you don't know the correct answer, don't know for sure, you never guess, you always ask.
During your time at the Vanderbilt Marriott, did you feel safe working there?
Yes.
Are you aware of any criminal activity that occurred in the hotel during the time that you were working at the Vanderbilt Marriott?
No.
What was your normal shift?
I usually work the morning shift, which was from 7 to 3:30.
And when you got to work at 7 in the morning, you were replacing someone that had worked the overnight shift?
Right.
Was there also a security guard that had worked the overnight shift when you would get to work?
Yes.
Now, was there a security guard that would then start on the same shift that you were?
Yes.
Is that individual by the name of Tim Easley?
It is.
And was he there the entire time that you worked at the front desk?
Yes.
How big is Tim?
He's pretty intimidating. He's pretty tall and I mean pretty good size. I mean.
So he earns the name Big Tim.
Yes.
Now, during your time at the front desk, were you ever responsible for pre-blocking or pre-assigning guests who had reservations into rooms?
No, that would be supervisor's job to pre-block.
Would that be something that would have been handled by the sales department?
It would have been handled by the supervisors. Pre-blocking so far as events would have been done by sales or by Carol with the events, but just regular rooms and pre-blocking, make sure you get guaranteed kings and things like that would have been David or the supervisor, Nina or Sheila.
During your time at the front desk, did you ever encounter reservations where there were requests from guests for an adjoining or connecting room?
They could put the request on there, but of course the request is not a guarantee.
If a customer walked in and requested a room next to another guest, how would you have handled that back in September of 2008?
Usually with most accounts like that, you will see that there's another room reserved under that same name, and it has the same code on there for connecting or adjacent rooms, adjoining rooms, so that you'll know and you can pair it up and know that this is the same reservation. If it's not an additional reservation and you don't know that there's not the same room, the same name, and to connect them, you will have to ask for further information in order to adjoin and connect them, because you can't just come in off the street or come in and say, yeah, that you know someone and you want to be next to such and such. That person has to be aware too. Otherwise, it has to be verification and information that we have to obtain before placing them directly beside someone that they would request.
That was really fast.
I'm
so
sorry.
we are going to break this down. That was really fast. I caught it, but I don't know if anybody else did. I don't know if the camera caught it. So let's break this down. So if you came in, let's say a guest came in, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith says, I have a reservation. If you had 2 rooms under his name, his information, and both rooms had an adjoining or connecting, how would you handle that?
Those rooms I would automatically block for joining or connecting, or they would automatically be blocked for joining and connecting before he would even check in. Because those rooms, we would have already known automatically that they were under the same reservation. They were both his rooms. They already had the request on there, and since we already knew automatically that there's not any further verification or anything that we need to double check, and that these 2 rooms could be beside each other, it would already be pre-blocked or already in that room for them.
If you had another individual come in and the names aren't the same, and he says, I want to be next to Sally Johnson, you wouldn't automatically just put him next to Sally Johnson?
No.
Would the first thing you would do is look to see whether Miss Johnson's reservation has a similar request to be next to Mr. Smith?
Right.
If you saw that both reservations had corresponding requests, could you put Mr. Smith next to Miss Johnson at that point?
Yes.
If Miss Johnson's room did not have that request to be next to Mr. Smith, would you then call Miss Johnson or try to get in contact with her before you put Mr. Smith beside?
I would have to.
And that was part of the training that you received at the Vanderbilt Marriott in 2000, when you started in August of 2007 moving forward?
Yes.
And that was the practice and procedure that you followed all times during your employment at the Vanderbilt Marriott?
Yes.
Were there instances in which you had guests that requested an adjoining or connecting room that you didn't feel comfortable accommodating?
There are times where we did have to get further verification. Not really any instances where I felt uncomfortable, because if the other party didn't know or couldn't verify it, then of course then they just wouldn't be put next to them. So it's just all about verifying with the other party that it's okay, or that they are aware, or that it is known that these people are requesting, or that they're wanting to be next to each other.
During your time at the front desk, if you had a reservation that came in, it had the code A1C1, and before we get there, A1 means adjoining, correct?
Right.
C1 means connecting?
Right.
So if the reservation had a special request for an A1C1, but it didn't say to whom it wanted to be requested, or connected or adjoined, you as the front desk agent, would you ever call Marriott International to try to investigate who it is?
No.
Would there be any indication to you when you're looking at the reservation in the property management system that Marriott International may have additional information that you don't know is there?
No.
Were you, prior to becoming involved in this suit, were you even aware that Marriott International had information that wasn't transmitted to the hotel?
No.
Would you have ever gone and tried to get into Marcia to figure out if there was any additional information?
No.
Prior to September of 2008, and I'll represent to you that the incident in question occurred on September 4, 2008. So prior to then, did you know who Miss Andrews was?
No.
When was the first time that you became aware of who Miss Andrews was?
A couple of days or so before her stay, David mentioned that she was so gorgeous and beautiful, and she was coming in, and he was just so excited about it, and I had no clue who she was, and he said that she was a sportscaster, so that was the first I'd ever heard of her.
And Dave, again, is Dave McWilliams, the front desk manager?
Yes.
And even though that was something that occurred almost 8 years ago, that sticks in your mind?
Yes, because that was the first time I'd ever heard of her, so.
Now, it's correct that you are the front desk agent that checked Mr. Barrett in, correct?
Yes, from what the reservation says, yes.
Now, you were aware that back in September of 2008, the Vanderbilt Marriott had concierge floor.
Yes.
If a guest with a reservation for a concierge room checked in the morning and rooms weren't yet available, would you have ever offered them access to the concierge lounge while they waited for the room?
Yes.
Was that something that was pretty common at the front desk back in September of 2008?
Yes.
Would it be even more so common if it was morning time and breakfast was being served?
Yes.
Now, at the concierge level, it was a free breakfast.
Right.
But if you went to the restaurant, you actually had to pay for breakfast.
Correct.
Apologize, just give me 1 second. Apologize. I found it. I think this is trial exhibit number 23. Referred to as the Oscar guest history. Mr. Mint, this is a document that's come into evidence several times. First of all, were you ever aware of what Oscar was when you were at the Nashville Marriott?
No.
This is a Oscar guest history form from Mr. Barrett. What I want to ask you about is right here. It's an info line. It says, it's shortened, but what everybody agrees it says is guest request to room next to Erin Andrews. So that's what I'd like to ask you about. If a comment such as that had been on Mr. Barrett's reservation when he checked in on the morning of September 4th, 2008, what would you have done?
I would have asked Dave about it. There would have had to been further verification on it, further question on it, because at that time I didn't know that she was someone that was well known, someone that should have took extra care of anyway, with privacy. So no one walking in or someone just putting on an account requesting to be next to her would have been already blocked and confirmed, like, okay, let's get them checked in right next to her. There would have been further verification or further checking in on the reservation because that comment was on there.
Even if you didn't recognize Miss Andrews, you didn't know who Miss Andrews was, would that process of verifying with her have changed?
No, it's still basic procedure.
If Mr. Barrett, let's assume this never got to the hotel. Never got there. It's still sitting over there at Marriott International. You're never aware that it was actually ever in existence. If Mr. Barrett had simply walked up to you that morning and said, I would like my room to be next to Erin Andrews, would you have handled that any different than what you've testified to this morning?
No.
You would have requested, first of all, you would have possibly checked Miss Andrews' reservation to see if she had a similar request.
Right, and at that time there still wouldn't have been any confirming that she was even staying at the hotel.
But if she was there, you would have then tried to contact her to make sure it was okay to put this individual next to her before you actually did so.
Yes, and even made him aware that yes, she is there.
So that last point, you wouldn't even confirm that Miss Andrews was actually there to Mr. Barrett. You would step away from the desk to make this determination.
Right.
I can't put my finger on it right now, but let's look at this one. So this is trial exhibit number 6. This is the split folio of Mr. Barrett after he had checked in. And you see down here at the bottom there's a comment line that says, do not move. Actually, let's do it with the one that I can actually put my finger on. Exhibit. Wait, I'll draw a second line. Okay. So you see that line there, Mr. Ben, on 18 comments, do not move?
Yes.
And this, well, M4 there, that also means do not move.
Correct.
Now, looking at this guest history master for Mr. Barrett, can you tell in any way, shape, or form at what point that comment was added?
No.
Do you know what do not move refers to specifically?
Usually it refers to a specific room or a specific room number, but that's still not, it still doesn't specify specifically what it means. No.
So you don't know, whoever put that in there, you don't know why they put it in?
No.
You don't know what it means specifically regarding to any specific room?
No.
Would it have been your practice to put an M4 or a do not move on a reservation?
No. Even if I or a regular guest service agent was to put it on there, the supervisor or manager would have removed it. They're the ones that have the override and the final say so on moves, do not moves and M4s. So even then, us putting it on there wouldn't have had any kind of say-so or any hold on it. If that stays in the system, it's because there is a manager or supervisor approval for it to be there.
So you could actually put that on there, but a manager would trump you.
And they'll take it off.
All right. If Mr. Barrett has testified here under oath that he never told you he wanted a room next to Erin Andrews, would you agree or disagree with it?
I would agree. I don't ever recall anybody ever asking to be put specifically beside her or really even too much about the stay at all.
If he had mentioned the name Erin Andrews, would that have been a red flag to you?
Yes.
And you would have gone to your supervisor?
Yes.
And they would have, you and your supervisor would have verified that Miss Andrews was okay with Mr. Barrett being beside her before Mr. Barrett even knew that she was there.
Right.
And much more so even before you would actually put him in a room next to Miss Andrews.
That's correct.
So if Mr. Barrett has testified under oath before these ladies and gentlemen that he never mentioned Miss Andrews' name during the check-in, would you agree or disagree with it?
I would agree.
Is there any doubt in your mind that he never mentioned Miss Andrews' name? Thank you. That's all I have. Good morning, Ms. Erin.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I know that you started with the Nashville Marriott working for Windsor, correct?
Yes.
You started with them in about September of 2008, correct?
October 17th of 2007 is the exact date.
You looked up the exact date?
Yes.
Very good. And then you left the Nashville Marriott and the employee of Windsor by when?
It was 2008. I think maybe November, December, so I'm not sure of the exact date.
Okay. All right. So you don't actually remember this check-in, do you?
No.
So you understand that Mr. Barrett, who testified by video, you understand he's a convicted felon, right?
That's from my understanding, yes. I don't know too much else about the trial or case. I haven't even been watching it on the TV, so.
Oh, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just wondering whether you knew that he was a convicted felon.
Yeah, just recently.
Okay. And you also know that he claimed that he got Erin Andrews' phone number on a house phone.
I wasn't aware of that, no. I don't know too much else about him.
Well, the house phones at the Marriott did not display people's room numbers, did they?
No.
Am I correct?
If you're in the room, it displays the room number on the back phone, but if you're calling from an outside line, it displays the telephone number.
The house phones themselves do not display numbers, correct?
You're talking about the guest service desk? Is that what you're referring
I'm
to?
talking about, you know how when we're a guest or we're a visitor, that there are phones there where we can go and pick it up and it connects us directly to the operator? You know what I'm talking about?
The phones in the rooms?
Not in the rooms. Downstairs, in the public areas, maybe by the elevator, sitting there on a table. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you don't, that's okay.
I don't, no.
Okay. So, that Marcia system that you remember, that was principally used by your superiors, correct?
I don't remember too much about Marsha, so I remembered it vaguely, so I didn't have too much to do with it, so yeah, it would be the supervisors.
Okay, so the supervisors and the managers would be the ones, from your recollection, the best you can remember, that would get into Marcia, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when your deposition was taken, you remember you had your deposition taken in this case?
Yes.
And you remember before your deposition, you met with one of the defendant's lawyers, it was Mr. Tom Smith, for about an hour alone?
I met with him, yes.
Okay. And then you came to your deposition, and Erin Andrews' lawyers, us, were allowed to ask questions, as were the lawyers for the defendant, correct?
Yes.
And at that deposition, you explained to us a little bit more about that M4 do not move thing. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So if we can put up Exhibit 5. And before I go any further, you had never worked at a hotel before the Marriott, correct?
No,
Am I correct?
you're correct.
Okay, I didn't want a double negative, all right? Okay. So, previously you had worked at Shoney's, Burger King, and H.G. Hills Real Estate, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so you worked at the Marriott for a while. Were you in school at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so you were helping yourself through school, and then when you left the Marriott, you never worked at another hotel again after that, correct?
No,
Am I correct?
you're correct.
Okay.
Still under the customer service, but no, not directly under hospitality or tourism in a hotel.
Okay, and certainly not at a front desk.
No, but I still did secretarial work and other things that, in customer service. I was still on the phone, still handling patients, guests, whatever else, but no, not directly at a hotel.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so if we look up there once again, we see Michael Barrett's name on Exhibit 5. We see the room number he was assigned to, 1049. You see that?
I do.
Okay, and then we go down to special requests. And if we could just highlight where it says A1C1. Now the A1C1, that would have come from the Marriott International Reservation or Center, correct?
Yes, it would come along with the request that he told the whoever customer service agent at the time when they made the reservation.
All right. But the M4, that would not come from Marriott International Reservations, right?
Technically it can. They have the same exact codes that we do, so I can't positively say that they didn't put it there. There's not a way to tell them for certain who exactly put the code on there.
I got you. So the M4, which means do not move, might have come from Marriott Reservations, correct?
It could have. They had the same codes that we have.
The only other way that could get on there, the M4, was if a manager or supervisor approved it, right?
The only way it stays on there. Right, anybody can put the code on there, anybody can request it, anybody can put it there that has access to the same accounts, the same information that we do. But whether it stays and it stays put does depend on the supervisor approval, yes.
Gotcha. Now, you know that these documents were produced in this lawsuit probably more than a year after the events happened. You
Right,
understand
this is
that?
guest history.
Okay. So the M4 there must have been approved by a manager or supervisor, correct?
It did have further approval in order to stay on the account, yes.
Okay. So do not move M4 requires a superior, a higher up to approve it.
Right.
Correct? Then the words do not move under it. That also requires a higher up or a manager to stay on there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that you told us at your deposition was that when you see the M4 on this and you see do not move, it meant to you that it means that this was...
Your Honor, again, this is not the proper means of using a deposition with a witness. You can ask a question and then use a deposition to the extent she gives an inconsistent answer. This is about the fourth different witness we've done this on.
I'll rephrase and... Okay. I just have to open this up here. Did you get a chance to read your deposition?
No.
Did they give it to you?
I'm not positive. I can't say.
Okay.
I did have paper or documents, so I can't say that they did not give it to me.
So when you see the M4 and do not move, does that mean to you that there was, quote, a big issue, close quote?
No.
Page 62 of her deposition, lines 18 to 25. There. This is you answering the question. Yes, and usually when it's like that, even though you have the M4 on there and they still put a note after that about do not move, is because maybe that guest made a big issue with the account of the guest, had problems before, or maybe some kind of elite member. But either way, they want to make sure that the guest is not moved and that person is in that room for whatever reason.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Does that refresh your memory? That when you
That does, and I was referring back, trying to give an example of an instance as to why that will be put on there and why it would stay. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a big issue at the hotel or that it is a big issue with the room, but they may have had it stay there that wasn't so pleasant the previous time, or there may have been a certain issue that the guest had, and that may not have been exactly a big blow-up issue, but enough for them that we can recognize it and then, okay, let's put you here or let's have you here, and okay, do not move them. So we've already handled this guest, we've handled their issues, we've resolved them, it's been handled, don't move them out of this room, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a big blow-up issue.
Well, as a matter of fact, when you were shown the documents as to what you would have seen on the PMS that day, you told us that it looked like there was a really, really irate and adamant customer who was maybe threatening to take his business elsewhere, right?
No, I do not remember that.
While he's looking for his next question, I hate to keep bringing this up, but can he please ask a question and get an answer before he starts reading her deposition to her?
Page 106 of her deposition. Actually, starting at page 105. And the answer goes through page 107, line 5. Here is your response. No, and like I said, looking back at the past 2 reservations, you could definitely see that there was some changes made and there were some problems. And when I said earlier that the do not move is placed on there and it has to have a supervisor's permission, and it's usually in most case scenarios when the guest is really, really irate or upset about something, or they're really adamant about wanting that room, or they're going somewhere else to stay, is when that's usually placed on there. And you could see that there was the room rate change dropped and the rooms changed from a double to a king, so you could tell that there were accommodations to him, that they changed his room over. They changed the room rate down and they lowered it. So I guess there was a problem during his stay somewhere. That's what it's looking like just from the paperwork and the notes that I'm seeing. So there were changes made, and it looked like there were probably multiple people that were able to access the account and make changes to it because there are a lot of things that's different on here. And of course, that could have been made by any one of the other coworkers because, of course, I'm only there for a certain amount of hours, but my name would still be on the reservation because I checked him in.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. When I was shown this exact paper and asked about the notations and the things on this account, that was the first time I had seen a guest account history since 2008. And I was shown this, and that deposition was taken almost a year ago. So, and I was shown just this one page. This is actually one of two pages that was split with the guest account in the room. So I was not shown the other page at the time when I made this statement. So this is actually a split account. So when I was shown this 109, I was thinking that this 109 was his set room rate, when in fact it wasn't. It's actually a split room rate. And the other side of his guest reservation shows that. And the other side of his guest reservation has notations and things on the account that wasn't shown as on this page here. So when I made that statement and I answered that question, I was not fully aware of exactly the whole guest account and everything I was saying. So that was guessing, and that was speculation just simply off of the guest account page and what I had seen for the first time since 2008.
Ms. Demenick, that day, September 4th, management got involved with this customer, right?
I don't know.
Well, when it says do not move, well, let me try this a little differently. We've all been to check in at hotels. So if Mr. Barrett had come up to you and you said his room was not ready or something like that, and if he then left and somehow learned that Erin Andrews was up in room 1051, and if he came back up to you, and it's just a simple transaction where he comes up and he says, I'm a Silver Marriott member, can you put me into 1049? Gives you his credit card and his identification. If that were to happen, there would be no reason whatsoever for that to say do not move, right?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me to confirm.
Well, if he's just coming up to you and say, I would like room 1049 for the night, there'd be no reason to get managers involved to approve M4 do not move, would there?
I'm not sure what you're asking me. I mean, are you saying that the notation wouldn't be on the account, or that the do not move wouldn't be there? Is that what you're asking?
What I'm asking you is if he does a standard check-in, if he comes up to you and says, you know what, I'm a Silver Marriott member, I'd really like room 249. Can you give it to me? And you check and it's available, and he gives you his credit card and his license. There'd be no reason to get a manager involved to put M4 do not move, right?
Yes, a manager would still have to approve that code and for it to be on there. They still have the final say, so we can't just put that on there and it stays. The manager has a final approval on that M4. It doesn't matter what time they check in. If that's on there in that notation, they have to approve it.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is if he just comes up like a standard check-in and says, I'd like room 1049, here's my stuff, there's no reason for you to come back and get the manager to put an M4 on it and to put do not move, is there?
The M4 is already on there. The manager will have to get approval. If it's not, then no. But if that notation is on there, the manager will have to approve the M4 or have to get some kind of approval on that account.
Okay, because if everybody who came up to check in, if you need to get manager approval of do not move, you'd be calling the manager every single time you check somebody in, right?
Yeah, you would if that M4 was on there.
So what you're able to tell us then is that unqualifiedly and without question, M4 do not move was already on there before you checked him in, right?
The notation could have been yes.
It was, wasn't it?
It could have been yes.
So, you also told us at your deposition that typically the Nashville Marriott would pull reservations 2 days before somebody was going to be coming in, right?
I didn't exactly say 2 days, because I didn't remember the exact time frame, but I know there is a layover time that the reservations transfer from the international system into ours.
And the reason that pulling would be done ahead of time was to make sure that there were enough rooms and everything was going to work on the day in question, right?
Right.
And one of the things that would come up when that reservation would come up 1 or 2 days ahead of time was A1, C1, right?
It could be on there, yes, if they requested it at the time they made the reservation.
And that means that you making a special request for an adjoining or connecting room, right?
Right.
And that would show up for you as well, correct?
Yes.
And so if you didn't know when you're doing the work a couple of 1 or 2 days ahead of time who he wanted to have an adjoining or connecting room to, you go to your manager, right?
No, at that time, if there was a reservation with his name on it for us to know that there was that these two need to be blocked or right next to each other, then we'll wait for him to check in.
But if Erin Andrews didn't have a joint reservation with this fellow, if you went and looked and there wasn't an adjoining reservation, but he's saying, I want an adjoining or connecting room, you'd have to find out who that was going to be with, right?
Right, we have to confirm with the other party before we put him beside someone.
But if you don't even know who the other party is, you have to find out who it is first, right?
Right.
And you would do that by going to the manager, right?
No, if they're already checked in, then we can confirm with them already. We have the room number to be able to confirm with that party or guest, or we have to confirm with them at the time when they do check in.
But if they haven't checked in a day or two before, when you are organizing the day that's coming up, you have to find out who that person wants to be next to, right?
If it's not known at the time before, if that information is not all there for us before they check in on the reservation, then we would get that information at the time when they check in.
Oh, so then you would ask Mr. Barrett, who do you want to be next to?
No, at that time he wouldn't be placed with anyone because he doesn't have this. If there's not an exact reservation to where we know for sure that he needs to be beside this one of these rooms, 2 rooms need to be with each other, then at that time it's just a request. It's not a guarantee because we don't know exactly the next adjoining or connecting room. So if Mr. Barrett was to check in and he needs an adjoining connecting room, if Ms. Andrews was already in there, then we would need to confirm with Ms. Andrews, which I wouldn't have done, which would have been a manager because of just her status. I wouldn't have went directly to her to confirm anything. A manager would have done that. But if Ms. Andrews hadn't checked in yet, then we would give him a room. I'll check him into a regular room. But even still, at that time, then when Ms. Andrews come in, then we'll confirm her information about him and being next to him. We still wouldn't just put her right next to him or him right next to her. Information would have to be confirmed with either party, whichever one who checks in first.
Do you know that she came in on September 3rd?
I do not know the exact date that she came in. I don't even really remember too much to stay.
Do you know that nobody, manager or otherwise, called her to tell her that Mr. Barrett was asking to be in the room next to her?
I did not know that, no.
The manager was supposed to do that, right?
If that was an issue at the time, he just wanted to be placed specifically next to her, then yes.
Now, coming back to the do not move, that would have been on there when Mr. Barrett walked up to you on September 4th, right?
It could have been, yes. It could have also been in there if he had a problem with rooms after he checked in and he needed to switch rooms. It could have been on there after they switched the rooms to make sure that he wasn't moved again. So at any time during his stay, at the time of reservations, when he checked in, even if he had a problem in his room, they had to switch rooms and they put an M4 on there. The M4 could have been put on there at any time during his stay.
You know his stay was just one night.
I did not.
Do you typically, when somebody checks in for a night, you put down "do not move"?
If there is some kind of problem or issue, or if there is a reason why it's on there, then it's placed on there.
The only reason "do not move" is up there is because the Nashville Marriott, without telling Erin and Ruth, had complied with his request to be put in a room next to Erin and Ruth.
I cannot say that now.
You mentioned something about sometimes you let people up to the concierge level if their room isn't ready yet. Remember that?
That is correct, yes.
And when that's done, do you give them a key to use that just allows them to get up to the 10th or 11th floors?
Yes, and that's usually for Marriott Rewards members. It's not for just any regular guest that comes in and have to be a Marriott Rewards member and on the 10th or 11th floor staying or going to be checked in on the 10th or 11th floor to be able to get a key to access it.
Okay. Now, we all know about those keys that get, magnetized or whatever at the front desk. But in order to do one of those so that you can identify who you're giving it to, do you get some information from the person to put it into the computer for a temporary key like that?
I actually don't remember exactly what information that we get to scan the key or anything. I just know that there's a key that's made to get up on the floor that's not connected to any exact room or room number for them to be able to access the concierge level.
And that's one of those magnetized cards, right?
Yes.
And have you ever seen any record anywhere that Mr. Barrett was issued a temporary key that would allow him to get up to the 10th floor?
No, that would not be noted on the guest account, any guest account.
It would be noted somewhere if it happened, right?
No, any key made up to the concierge level just for to get access for breakfast or something, there will be no notations on any guest account for that. You will not find any notations on any guest account period for that.
But did you know that Mr. Barrett said that he went to the restaurant?
No, I told you I don't really remember too much anything about the stay at all.
And the restaurant's on the 2nd floor. He didn't go to the concierge level to have breakfast, did he?
I'm not sure what he did. I don't remember the stay.
Incidentally, another thing that you told us at your deposition, let me just ask it first so I don't cross-check you. The A1C1, that is typically handled by the event coordinator at that time at the Nashville Marriott, right?
Not necessarily. Usually when you have A1C1s, it's usually with an event, bridal parties, things like that, when you have people that want to be specifically next to each other in an adjoining connecting room. So usually when you see those, mainly it's concerning a party, but it doesn't have to necessarily be concerning a party. It's still just a regular request that Marriott International can put on there, or just a regular employee. It's just a normal call along with the regular list.
Deposition at page 45. Line 19 through 46, line 6. Question. When you worked at the Nashville Marriott, was there anyone that you were aware of who was responsible for checking for adjoining or connecting room requests ahead of time to make sure that those were fulfilled? Answer. The event coordinator. That's why I say usually when people make a request like that, it's done ahead of time at the time of the reservation, because you're not positive that that room is going to be available right next to you when you come at the time to check in. So usually those requests are made way ahead of time to ensure they're available. The event coordinator, when the reservations were pulled, would have been the one that's put in a do not move room, right?
No, would be the only, would not be the only person. If there was an event going on and that request was on me, that's usually when you see the request, if there's a major event or a blocking that needs to go on, which she would do pre-blocking. But again, she's not the only one to access those codes. She's not the only one that does blocking, and this was not a party or an event. So she wouldn't have done the blocking on that, but she would have gotten it if it was a party or an event, and she would have done the blocking for adjoining or connecting. But this was a regular reservation, so no, she would not have done that.
If a phone call was made by Mr. Barrett to the hotel before he ever made the reservation at the Marriott call center, and if he asked, will Erin Andrews be staying at your hotel, you were not supposed to tell him.
That is correct. And that's with anybody, that's not just with her, that's anybody's basic privacy.
And if the hotel, whoever answered, said, yes, she's going to be here, that would violate standards.
That would.
Now, you know, Ms. DeMint, let me find it just to be precise. Give me one moment. You believe that Mr. Barrett never told you verbally at the desk to put him in the room next to Ms. Andrews. That's what you believe, correct?
Yes.
You don't actually remember, but that's your belief, right?
That is my belief, but even though I may not recall the exact stay, or even really too much about Marriott or the job there, because I mean it's been so many years and I've done so much since, there's still basic guidelines and procedures and policy and stuff that you remember learning. You don't give away people's basic privacy and information. That's across the board with any job. So it doesn't matter whether I remember the stay or not. I would not have given that information out. That's basic.
But the reason that you believe that he never told you to put him in the room next to Miss Andrews is because it was already in the system, right?
I'm not sure. But you can go ahead and read it. What did I say?
Well, I got to cite for the record first where it is, okay?
Go ahead.
Page 105, line 2 through line 8. Question. So is it your testimony that you believe that Mr. Barrett never told you to put him in the room next to Miss Andrews? He didn't. I'm sorry, answer. He didn't. I don't think he asked me directly. No. It was already in the system. Does that refresh your memory?
If that's written there, then yes.
Yeah. So the reason he didn't have to ask you is because it was already in the system with clear instructions from the supervisor or manager, do not move, right?
If that's what the paper said.
You see it up there?
I do see do not move on there, yes. Like I said, that could have been added by anybody on there, but if it stayed on there, then there was a supervisor or manager approval, which I was not.
And just the last thing I want to ask you about, Tim Easley Was Tim Easley with Cumberland Security?
I have no clue. I just know he was there and on staff and he took care of things, but I don't know exactly who he was employed by.
Oh, okay, he was on staff because what he was, Tim Easley was not a security guard from the security company. He was a fellow who worked that function at the Marriott along with a number of other things for which he was on staff, right?
I have no clue about that. Again, I just know that he did his job while I was there and what he was supposed to do, but who he was employed by and what his title was or anything, I can't say. But he did secure things and he watched cameras and he made sure that everything was on point while I was there and while I was working.
Do you remember anyone whatsoever from the top manager on down at the Nashville Marriott on September 2nd, 3rd, or 4th calling, texting, emailing, sliding a note under the door, or in any other way communicating to Erin Andrews that a fellow named Barrett was asking for the room next to hers?
I can't tell you what I wore yesterday, let alone recall exact recollections of September 3rd, 4th, or 5th, or whatever your dates were, so no.
Fair enough. Thanks so much.
Mr. Mint, I'm going to be very quick. 3 quick areas I want to hit. What type of room is 1049, the room that Mr. Barrett was checked into?
That's a double.
And Mr. Barrett was guaranteed a king, correct?
Correct.
In your experience at the front desk, what is more important to the hotel to ensure they comply with, guarantees or requests?
Guarantees.
And in the guest's mind, which one, in your experience, are guests more concerned with? The guarantee that they got or a request they might have asked for?
Guaranteed.
Okay, so let's go back, and Mr. Broylette was asking you questions about some folio documents, and we've already kind of gone over these. I want to make sure I get this right. So in your deposition, you were shown this document, correct?
Yes.
And in that, you noted a room rate of $109.
Yes, which I said in my deposition I thought may have been a problem because it was lowered, but it's actually a split room rate, which I did not know at the time when I said that.
So the room rate was actually $239.
Right, which is the market room rate.
And so what you think, let me back up. In a situation where a guest is really upset, they are really angry with something that's occurred, in your experience, has a reduced room rate been an option?
It is an option, along with others, yes.
So when you were just shown this one document, one of the explanations that came to your mind for why a rate would be so low was that, well, maybe Mr. Barrett was very angry. Is that correct?
Or there may have been an issue as to why it was lower, because if there was a lower room rate, then there was some kind of issue to have that lowered.
Now, what you were not shown in your deposition by Mr. Lanzetta, counsel for Ms. Andrews, is the second folio, correct?
Correct.
And so if you had been shown that second folio, you could have connected the dots and said, whoa, 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 this is just a split folio.
Correct, which I was never shown that second page.
So if there were records that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury have seen in this trial that indicate that Mr. Barrett was not pre-assigned, not pre-blocked into 1049 as of the morning of his check-in, you weren't shown those either today by Ms. Andrews' counsel, were you?
No.
Nothing further.
Just briefly. The original document was for a king bed, right?
The document that you showed me, that with the extra writing on it, that first one?
Let me put it this way. There was a request for a king bed, but he ended up going to 1049, which is double, correct?
Correct.
Being in 1049 was more important to him than the kind of bed, right?
I can't say that. There could be many reasons why that could be changed, and I can't specify or say a specific reason as to why.
Nothing further.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you.
We'll take the 10, 50 minutes.